some kind of levered mechanism. This one. Bye-bye relay. Okay, theory. If I can get this running, maybe the extra speed of the engine running will help the pump move quicker and actually create enough vacuum to pull fuel from the tank. So, guess we'll try that. A little bit of fuel with some 2-stroke oil in it. Squirt in there. It's way too much. Perfect. It runs, kinda. See if I can fill it from the vent tube here. Well, we got fuel out, and it's gross. I received the car with no keys. Here's the ignition. Took it to a locksmith, and I've had keys imprinted and made. Keys cut, keys work. So now I'm set and everything should be good, right? No. The keys, well, they don't work on the doors. They also don't work on the fuel cap. But the only way I'm going to be able to get that off is with a drill. For now, let's get this ignition switch put in. I'm pretty sure steering lock working. There we go. Meantime, go away. On to removing this guy. So this is the solenoid that was controlled by that button for a remote release. Now that that solenoid's out, the boot spring tension is enough to actually raise the boot a bit, or even all the way. I'd really like to be able to save this fuel cap and fuel cap lock, but I don't have any option except to drill that lock out so I can get it off. Ooh. The panhard rod is so bent that it's stopping the tank from coming out. I'm actually going to have to remove one end of that panhard rod just to get the tank out. The fuel sender was seized. I have freed it up, but I don't know if it's reading correctly. The pickup sock is trashed. The tube itself is loose, so that needs some work. All right, we'll get on to getting the fuel out. Oh dear. That's gross. I'm not going to go ahead and refit this. This tank is from a UC Tirana or a Sunbird. This part of the tank actually sits over where the muffler and exhaust need to sit. I need that space. This isn't the right tank. Finding an original tank is impossible. I'm going to have to buy a aftermarket fuel cell and adapt that to fit so this project can disappear. So I just need to rig up a system that will run fuel from a remote tank that I'll strap into the engine bay. The plan is put the lines in, put some fuel into the carb to keep it running long enough so the pump can cycle and run, observe the fuel coming through the return back into the temporary fuel tank. Once that's working, we know the bowl is going to be filled by the fuel pump. The car will keep running. Put a timing light on, adjust the timing if required, close the bonnet and see if this thing will drive out under its own power. Ah, come on. Okay, so the pump appears to be working and I'm getting flow back into the bottle, but it seems to be bypassing the carb and coming straight back out, and the bowl's running empty. I've tried tapping the housing to see if the float's stuck or the needle is stuck. I'll try and loosen that up and let fuel go into the bowl, and it's not working. So I think I'm at the point where I'm going to have to pull that carb off. I really did want it to run with the original carb and drive it out of here, but I think it needs some work. And to do that, I need to take it off anyway. So next step, change the carb. So this is a Cheba, or a Chinese Weber. It's a copy of a DGV 3236 found on lots of 2-litre cars. This one's jetted to suit a 1600. The advantage of this guy is it runs a mechanical secondary. So as you put your foot down more, it opens the secondary. You can control the airflow with your foot rather than the ASIN using a vacuum secondary. This diaphragm tends to fail. If it gets a hole in it, you lose that. Also, this one being completely seized doesn't help either. So the footprint of the original carb is actually smaller than the Weber, which means we need to run an adapter plate like this. Here we go, first attempt to drive in about a decade or more under its own power. Let's see what happens. Okay, went into gear all right. There we go, got no rear view mirrors, so that's handy. Get around this corner, come on. No brakes, none. I think I'd like to get the brakes working. So that empty reservoir is going to need fluid. I'm going to need to bleed all the brakes out, and it will also help me find where the leak is, because this stuff doesn't just evaporate. Ooh, that's going to need a clean. That's definitely going to need a clean. Attempting to bleed the brakes resulted in no fluid movement. Likely means the brake master is no good, so in the meantime I'll just keep moving the car, utilising the handbrake to stop. Alright, now that it's cut and all the sharp edges are removed, time for a bit of a test fit. Alright, so that plate's now in place, in about the right spot, actually fits. Now it's a matter of marking out the mounting points for the fuel cell. So before bolting in the fuel cell, I'll need to put the carpet in. Before I put the carpet in, this will need to be cleaned off. That's just out of that rear carpet. Gross. In order to make the holes for the mounting points for the fuel cell, I'm going to use a soldering iron to go through the carpet. I learnt that trick from Vice Grip Garage. I've never done it before. It seems to work for him, so hopefully it'll work for me too. Matter of locating the hole, pushing the soldering iron in, and that will self-seal the carpet. Make a nice hole in the carpet, which is done, and hopefully not ruin my soldering iron. That soldering iron trick made a perfectly nice hole in the carpet with sealed edges. Excellent. Okay, so off camera I did a bit of test fitting with the tank and the carpet in place. Everything's looking pretty good. So it's time to pull the plate out, lay down a bead of sealant, and then bolt this in and set it in place. Floor plate's in, fitted, bolted down, sealant applied, carpet's in, tank's bolted in on top, everything's all nice and secure. One last check. That's not going anywhere. Now I know I said that was a return line, but in this case the electric pump will deadhead against the carb, so this is actually just going to be a tank vapor line or relief line for pressure. Alright, fit the feed line onto the tank. Search for tools with your boots. Find the tools with your boots. Fuel pump's now fitted, fuel line's attached, running to the hard line, which heads out to the front of the car. The vapor line's also attached, so everything back here is done, except for wiring connections, which I'll need to work on shortly, but I would like to get the engine bay line run to the carb and add the filter. Alright, so fuel line onto the hard line. Alright, now just got to find some fuel and do a quick nasty wiring job on that pump to get it to run, to see if I actually have the hoses hooked up the correct way. I hope so. I'm just going to try and rig up the jump pack to the pump to get it to run. Then I'll head up the front to see if the fuel actually gets to the carb. Oh, pump's running. It's definitely in the filter. Let's put the key on. It's going to help if it's got spark, you know? When I checked the fuel cell mounting, the rear showed quite a bit of bounce. The front passenger side is even more pronounced, and the front driver's side is quite flat and not responsive. Well, there is quite a lot of wheel gap, so while we're replacing suspension components, we'll lower it as well. Lowering springs from King Springs, which are to suit Holden Gemini, but do apparently fit these quite well. Quite a few other cars. They are the KMF LO4s. They're still wrapped obviously, but I will do a comparison once I get these old springs out. Gonna need shorter shock absorbers to suit. These are apparently for a Holden Kingswood, but will also fit this. How, I don't know. A white line adjustable panhard rod to suit the lowering of the car and get rid of that bent one. And lower and upper trailing control arm bushes, along with all the other bushes to suit the rest of the car, to go in to firm up all the slop that's in the rear end. Shock removed. It's a bit of a side-by-side comparison. New shock, push it down, it should return. And the old one, nothing. Junk. Very tight. So here we have stock springs are out, replacement springs. Fair bit of difference in there. Change these insulators over. Next, get the panhard rod out of here. As you can see, the panhard rod's pretty bent. That bushing there is actually pretty wallowed out, not in good condition. Nice new straight adjustable panhard rod. The purpose of this is to keep the rear wheels central to the vehicle, and when you lower the car, it changes the distance between the two attachment points. So you need this adjustability to bring those wheels back to center of the car. Well, that's the trailing arms removed. Now I need to work on getting the bushings out. Typically the easiest way to get them out is by burning them out. Just drill a few holes, fill it with a bit of terps, set them on fire. 53-year-old rubber is bound to be less than pristine. As you can see, the bushes are cracked, split and warped, and even stretched sideways, so the arm is no longer central. So the rubber will either burn away completely or it will turn into crumbly ash, which will be much easier to remove than, even though this is old crusty rubber, still a bit bound to those control arms. It's still smouldering, but as you can see, it's very crusty and weak. That should come out easily. The bushes are all fitted. I couldn't show you that because there's no light in my shed. Now we need to fit the sleeves into the bushes, lubricate with some moly grease. Just using the tip of a small paintbrush, apply the grease to the inside of the bush, and importantly, lubricate the shaft before inserting. Makes it much easier. Right, so now the faces and the mating surfaces have all been greased. It's a matter of getting the arms and fitting them back in. As you can see, the gap here is now significantly less than when we started. Perfect. I just plugged the blower fan back in. Hopefully it still works. Give it some power. Ooh, I was afraid that would happen. We can get some more to come out. Well, I am kind of jumping all over the place today. I do want to do the rear brakes, but we all know that the master's actually dead. So, I've got a replacement with a difference. You remove the bracket for that reservoir because this master comes from a Toyota Tercel. The reservoir is built into the master, has the same bore diameter. The Tercels also run rear drum brakes, so the drum bias should be correct. The spacing for the mount is the same. This is a direct bolt in for a TA22 Celica, and removes the need to run a remote reservoir. These lines will require some adjustment. By adjustment, I mean bending and hopefully not kinking. Just need them out of the way for the time being. I'm actually a bit tempted to give that a bit of a rebuild. Way too much. Perfect. That's pretty much brand new, really. So it's time to start pulling all the brakes apart, replace the shoes, replace all the springs and other related hardware, replace the slave cylinders, and axle seals, maybe the bearings if they require it, and the often forgotten about rear brake hose. I'll go for the shoe retainers. That boy seemed really stuck. Oh, I hope that pin didn't break. Nope, we're good. The slave cylinder will come free once I get the springs off and the shoes start coming out. Try and work on this return spring next. Pretty much just falls apart, I guess. Get this guy out of the way. The self-adjuster. The self-adjusting mechanism. There's also a spring for that. Next step, there's 4 nuts holding on the retaining plate here. So I'll try and crack them loose with this. Next, I'll use the old drum as a slide hammer. Fit it backwards. A couple of wheel nuts. Give each of them a few turns. That goes in here. Just going to leave that to soak for a while and move on to a couple of other jobs. There we go. New seal. Bit of Diff oil on the outside and inside edge of the seal. Make sure it goes in the right way. Line it up centrally-ish. Ring of the old seal, front of the new one, so as not to damage the new one. Now the fun part starts, trying to get the brake shoes back in. So a bit of copper grease on these contact surfaces. Park brake and adjuster return. Spring already fitted to that shoe. Next I get the slave cylinder fitted. You sit on there. This is the fun spring, and by fun spring I mean not fun at all. Alright, that side's on. Now I need to get this over here. Attempt 1 of probably 50. So I got it on the first shot. Look, that never happens. Never. Rear brake line here is very crusty. It runs from here to the axle. I'll take this guy out and replace. So yes, this brake line has seen better days. It's in solid. Let's hope that when it comes time to fill it with fluid and bleed the brakes, that this doesn't leak. So the prop shaft's off. Now it's just a matter of removing that pinion flange so I can get to the seal. Put some bit of diff oil on the shaft, lubricate before inserting. Well, refilling the diff with oil means I've got to get it back on the ground. Somehow I've got to pour it out of there into the diff. How am I going to do that? I guess I could run a hose out the back up here to a funnel, hope that the hose stays in the diff, pour the oil in to the volume I think should be in there, hope I don't spew it all over the ground and make a huge mess. Or could use the garden sprayer. Take the nozzle off the end, pour the oil in here, pressurize it, trigger control, easy to reach, solution. The diff and the transmission both take the same oil. The diff takes 1.2 litres, the transmission takes 1.5. Use the measurement indicators on the side of the bottle to get a rough estimate of how much oil I actually need. Transfer, pressurize, fill. There we go. Now I've already cracked them loose, but much like the diff, you want to make sure you can get the fill plug undone first before undoing the drain. Now that the mount is out, we can see that's completely collapsed compared to the new one. That rubber is very soft, very gooey. That thing's trashed. Put a nice new mount back in its place. Overnight, not so overnight parts from Japan. I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but lowered front springs for this car are impossible to find now. So I ordered some springs from Japan. Only issue is, had to buy a full set. Fortunately, they're only $200. Some front springs. And the rears, I'm probably going to leave the other springs in there, but if the height isn't even from front to rear, I'll probably throw these in as a matching set. Well, tackling the front end is more than just suspension. Brake discs are going to have to be replaced. Change the wheel bearings, do the brake lines, take the shock out of the strut, as well as replace the spring, replace the strut tops, which are obviously very worn out. Ball joints on both sides are completely shot. Control arm bushes need replacing. The sway bar doesn't even have a bracket on the passenger side. End link bushes are completely shot. The tension rod bushes also need replacing. The steering arm joints are not in great shape either. This whole assembly will get replaced on both sides. I may need to look at ordering a new pitman arm as well, but I'll find out once I get all this torn down. These calipers aren't held on by bolts like traditional calipers. They use a pin and shim system to wedge it into the bracket. So I need to take these pins out, knock these shims out, and I should be able to get the caliper free. There we go. Caliper is out. Oh man, what a mess. Well, that's that off. There we go. Oh, looks like these bushes had been replaced previously. Why these and nothing else, I've got no idea. Parts for the bin are these strut tops. The bearing in here is completely rusted out and seized, and the other one is very crunchy. The new one, much better. Oh, let's try and get a bulk of this grease out. Yay. Oh, this stuff smells as bad as Diff oil. I'm going in nude. Now into the paint tray / parts washer. Leave that to soak. Passenger one at the same time. Alright, so all the components are painted and dry. Now it's time for reassembly. So I'm going to start with the control arms and refit the bushes to those. Didn't even need the vise for that one. Just put it in by hand. Now fit new ball joints. So I've got some shorter shocks to pair with the lowering springs. Sorry, this is the original broken one. And this is the new one. As you can see, the body's actually a fair bit shorter. If I bring them up level, the travel for the piston's also shorter. These shock absorbers are to suit the rear of an SW20 MR2, but now they're going to live in the front of a TA22. The shorter body of the shock doesn't suit the strut. So all I'm going to do is drop a few washers in the bottom to space it out, so then it will sit in there firmly. It won't have any knocking noises while driving around. Need to grease up the inside of the hub. I only want to half fill that. You don't want it completely packed full. Get the seal in. It went in pretty well by hand, actually. Right, gonna prep the springs for fitment. Too tight? Maybe. And just to be sure, put some grease in this cap. Slowly getting through the pile of parts to go back on. Next thing I think I'll put on is the sway bar. The bushes are already lubed. It's just a matter of fitting them to the sway bar, then mounting the bracket, and then we'll move on to the end links. Try the other way maybe. That's the seal. Next I've got to get this pitman arm off. So that new seal's in place on the steering box, and the new pitman arm is fitted. Painted up idler arms fitted, and moves much more freely than it did before. Hold it in place. Well, I don't hate it, but I may need to put those other rear springs in. Alright, so the car's back on the ground and the ride height between front and rear is a bit more even. It is lower than stock, so I'm happy with that. We've got a worn engine mount and a new one. Down here is an oil pressure switch which merely operates the light for the dash. It's not actually for a gauge. As you can see, currently the light does not illuminate. So I've got it out. I don't believe this is the correct oil pressure switch because it only had 1.5 or 2 threads of engagement. So I've put the other one in, which went in the entire way. Now we'll go and have a look to see if the light comes on. Okay, so the oil pressure light's on. We'll see if we can get it to go off with the car running. Straight away, look at that. Perfect. The coil does seem to be working quite fine, but it looks a bit tatty and old. I want to make sure it's generating the most amount of spark possible. So I'm going to replace it with this one. It's not the easiest to see, but the steering coupler there's got some splits in it, so that's likely to be no good, like all the other rubber components. I had to drop the steering box to get this out, and as you can see, it is starting to tear apart. It's quite old. That is just, yeah, not great. Next job is to work on the clutch. So first, I'm going to drain it and then remove the hose and change it over for one that isn't cracked. It's just a can there to hold the dirty old fluid, which I'm going to draw out with a little syringe. It's quite dark, old fluid. Now I'm just going to climb underneath, open the bleed screw on the slave and let that fluid drain out, just to try and get the fluid out of that hose so I don't make a mess when I do take it off. The new one appears to be a bit longer, but that shouldn't matter too much. Brand new bottle of some nice .4. Alright, so I've got to climb underneath the car to open the bleed nipple, and I've enlisted the help of one of the small humans I'm responsible for to operate the pedal. I'll be instructing her to push the pedal down and release it as required. Up, down, up. Cool. Now I just need to do the same thing for the brakes. Finally, brakes. Hopefully nothing leaks. I'm going to fill this up and start with the furthest away spot, which is the passenger rear, and then driver side rear, and then bleed the fronts, get all the air out, and hopefully have working brakes for the first time in this car since I've owned it. So I've jumped forward through the brake bleeding process. It's all done, pedals firm, car stops. And that's one more main hurdle that was required to be overcome to be able to get this thing back on the road. Not really the colour you want your coolant to be. Should be green. Isn't. Yuck. What is this? There's no thermostat in here. Yeah, we're going to have a lot of grossness in this cooling system. There's a better look at that in the light. That is very orange. I'm going to try running some fresh water through it a couple of times to see if I can get a bulk of this out just with running the engine, and then I'll put some radiator flush in and let that go to work. This is going to take a few runs. I think I'll come back once I've got it clear and tell you how many times it took. It's probably pretty hard to tell on camera, but it's starting to look more like dirty water than concentrated Fanta. But this is run number 8 and it's still coming out like this. All right, lucky run number 13. It looks kind of dirty here, but I mean, it is dirty, but it's not like Fanta. So I think I'm going to put the radiator flush in next and run that to what the instructions say on the bottle, and then see if we can make it darker than that again. I've got this stuff, and it says to run for 10 minutes, unless your system's really dirty, in which case you should run it for 20. So clearly we're going to be running it for 20.
"20 minutes later."
So this has been left to cool down for long enough. I should be able to get the cap off. Yep, good. I'll get the bottom hose off and drain it out and see if that flush did anything. Oh yeah, it's darker again. So after using that radiator flush, it has turned the water back to orange juice, dirty orange juice. So I'm sure it has done something, but I need to do something a little bit more aggressive. This is a new toy. It's a radiator flush gun. Compressed air goes through here, garden hose goes there, supercharges the velocity of the water through the radiator and cooling system, and hopefully flushes all that out. Also, I haven't taken out the block drain yet, so I'll do that to try and flush out everything from the lower extremities of the block. So I've got it set up in the top hose. I'm going to try and flush everything out and down and see if I actually push something out of that block drain. Oh my God. So I've never used one before, but this radiator flushing tool was worth every cent spent on it. I don't reckon I could have got that out with just a hose. Definitely worth the investment. If you haven't got one and you need to flush a cooling system, get one of these. I think I'd like to flush the radiator separate from the system itself, just to make sure there's no debris left in the bottom or the top of it. And I think while I've got it out, I might give it a quick rebuild. I'll see if I can get anything out with just the hose alone. I'll give it a bit of a... There's a little bit of orange there. I think I'm tempted to go and get that cooling system tool and run some pressure through that. I'm going to get wet if I do that. Now I'm just going to go all over the radiator with this small wire brush because I like to punish myself for some reason. Remove all the loose paint and then give it a fresh coat. Get rid of this corrosion around here too. I think for these more heavily corroded pieces, I'm going to go and get the wire brush on the drill and blast them. Let's give that a bit of a rinse, let it dry, hit it with some paint. Alright, so while I'm waiting for the water to dry off that radiator before I paint it, I'm actually going to fit a thermostat to this and replace the gasket. And even though it's working, I do have a replacement sender for the temperature gauge, so I'm going to whip that one out and put my new one in because new parts. Actually, I might leave it in place while I sort this out. It'll just save getting any of this crud in those threads. Alright, so both these surfaces are nice and clean now. Next step's to get that sender out. I'll hang on to that. We do have the replacement. Hopefully it's the right size. Yes. Probably tight enough. I don't want to go too far because this is aluminium and I don't want to crack it. Got the old Permatex aviation sealant. Apply some to the gasket itself. Right, so we got the radiator suspended here, ready to be painted. And I always like using this Rust-Oleum 2X stuff. Not sponsored, I just think the paint covers really well, levels out nicely, and gives good coverage. So let's get to it. And then I started looking at this, which is for the water feed to the heater box for the demister. It looks really ugly, and right here is bulged out and very soft. That's just waiting to explode almost as soon as I start driving the car, dumping all the coolant and making the car overheat. I don't ever intend on driving the car in conditions that would require a demister, so I think this can get deleted. Be able to get rid of this ugly bracket and the hose and everything, and I just need to cap off from the outlet from the water pump, put a plug in the block, and it should be good. Hose clamp, and I created a plug out of the old barb for the block. And get our fully rebuilt radiator put back in. Gently, slowly. Lower Toyota hose from Gates. Top radiator hose replacement from McKay. Here's a match. Good. Now the original cap happens to be a genuine Ford one, but it fit the Toyota. Seemed to be sealing fine, but that there, all the cracks in it, that's perishing. The rubber's failing, so instead of waiting for it to die completely, just get a new replacement. I got myself a metal 1 litre catch can to use as a radiator overflow. Using these brackets, which happen to line up perfectly with the holes on that, and to here on the frame also line up perfectly, so I don't even have to drill anything. It's got a little sight tube, so I'll be able to see the level of coolant without taking the lid off. And there's some plugs and barbs, of which the orientation I need to switch around to suit the application. So I want the radiator inlet to come into the bottom of the bottle, and if it does need to overflow, I'll have one on the high side here, which will be the same as the standard overflow bottle setup. Take these out. 6mm Allen key for those. All these fittings have O-rings on them, so it shouldn't leak. Alright, that's the port orientation all set up the way I want it. So that's the brackets bolted onto the overflow. Overflow is supposed to line up with these two holes, and it does perfectly. It's like it was meant to be. It's got a carbon canister from a Volkswagen Jetta mounted to a custom bracket that I made to live in here. It's not really required. It wasn't in the car when I got it, but it will sort of help trap any fuel vapors from the tank if the car's parked in a hot area, and the bleed off will run straight to the intake there, which the car will draw in once it's running. So it's got a specific line that suits. This goes into the carbon canister. I need to cut this end off, fit an adapting barb, because I need a 13mm ID hose to lead into the carburetor. It's canister fitted, line fitted, barbs fitted, hooked up to the air filter. That's that job done. Next, I think I'll pull the valve cover off and get that ready for paint. I'm just going to try and wire brush off all this corrosion to give a nice surface for the paint to adhere to. This is a wrinkle effect paint, but it didn't come with any instructions, and usually they're pretty finicky on their application method. So I just looked up the application method for the VHT wrinkle paint and copied that. I started with one first light coat, followed by 3 very heavy coats applied in different directions for each coat, and then once that had sort of dried, sit it in the barbecue to bake it to cure. So now the valve cover has been baked and cured, and the effect actually turned out okay. There's a fairly nice, even, very fine wrinkle finish, except for the areas I masked off. I'm probably not going to clean these up any more than this. It's enough of a contrast against the black paint. But before I refit this, I may as well check the valve clearance tolerances and adjust accordingly. So in order to do that, we need to get these out of the way. The workshop manual states you need to get it onto the compression stroke on cylinder 1 and then check the intake side on cylinders 1 and 2, exhaust side on 1 and 3, then rotate the engine 1 full revolution, do the intake on 3 and 4, and do the exhaust on 2 and 4, and that's all of them adjusted. So intake side when cold is 0.18, exhaust side is 0.30. That's too tight. 1 and 3 for exhaust. Well, that's good. 1 full revolution. Get that screwdriver all the way down and back up to the top, and that'll be the exhaust stroke. 2 no good. 4 no good. Now it's tight. Recheck again. Yep. I'm happy with that. Silicon valve cover gasket. I think the valve train's actually a little bit quieter from that adjustment, so I guess that's a good thing. Before I drop the front end of the car down, I need to sort out the reverse switch. Now I've just pulled out the old one, which doesn't appear to work, and the replacement is a different size. There was a ball bearing on top of this, and I can't see how that would work properly. I think this one here needs to be in there because it'll reach further into the gearbox and actually make contact. Regardless, I think this one's dead anyway, and I'll show you what I mean. Just quickly before testing, here we are, 2 reverse switches. So as you can see, the new one will reach in further to the gearbox, which I think it needs to anyway. Got multimeter on continuity mode. Look, I'm not sure if you'll hear this, but when I put the leads together, dead switch, press together on the 2 points. When I press the switch, nothing happens. Now, when I do the same thing with the new switch, seeing as this switch goes into the gearbox up on an angle, trying to set a loose ball bearing on top of that while getting the switch in without this much room for your hand doesn't make for a fun time. I think that's the wrong switch and this is the right one. I'll throw it in and test it out and we'll see if it works. Alright, they're hooked up, currently no continuity. Now throw the transmission into reverse and see if it activates. Success, we have a working reverse switch. Now because bodywork is my least favourite thing to do, I'm going to start by working on this front section only. The bumper has a dent in it, it's been tweaked out, so I'm going to try and straighten that. The headlight rings have some flaking black paint. They're supposed to be chrome, so I'd like to restore them to the way they're supposed to be. The grille obviously is, I don't know, gross. It needs some attention. These filler panels, they're multicoloured. I'd like to make them uniform. And the radiator support probably should be all black, not body colour. Maybe it's body colour from factory, but I like to try and hide it, so work on just pulling apart the front end. Not even really screwed in there, but okay. That's the most awkward way to do that. Probably a good thing I pulled the guards off. I expected these rubber seals here to be completely perished, but it hasn't rusted out the corner, so that's good. It's pretty much the same on the other side, except with a surprise. The corner here is not rusted out, but wasp nest. I mean, I found plenty, but that's another one to get rid of. So time to get to work to that. Just go, get out, die. Eviction notice has been served. After I finished pulling off those parts, I was getting ready to sandblast them. Thought I'll take a little break. Went browsing online and I found something that I just couldn't resist. So the rest of my day was taken up by going out and picking up a couple of hookers. These kind of hookers, mufflers. No. So obviously second hand, but I got them for a good price. There's a bit of tubing there I can work with, maybe start fabbing up most of an exhaust once the headers arrive from down south. In the meantime, I'm going to roll this out, wash it down, get it ready for paint, and start sandblasting some stuff. Now while I'm waiting for that to dry before I apply paint, I'm going to sandblast some of these parts because some of them are a bit rusty and they need to be cleaned up before I also paint them. It's time to get on with it, I guess. Much better now. Alright, so all the parts have been taken off, cleaned up, ready for a coat of paint. I need to black out everything on the front end. So most of the painted parts sitting here all dry. Now it's just a matter of reassembly, almost. The headlight surrounds. I've cleaned this one up because previous owners painted all around there and they should have nice chrome rings. I've removed the paint. You can see where the factory coating has finished here. So that one needs a bit more cleaning up. This one needs total cleaning, so I'll sort that out before attempting some reassembly. It's going to take a while. All right, so that's both of these cleaned up. There's a bit of tarnishing here on the chrome. So I'm going to use this Auto Sol metal polish, try and bring that up to a nice shiny finish. Yeah, I would say that's going to come up just fine.
Later.
That's one done, so that's polished versus unpolished. So yeah, that metal polish made a difference. After this is done, I'll need to mask up to get this line straight again on both of these, repaint the backgrounds black, and then these are done. I've still got some polishing left to do before I refit everything. The corner lenses need a bit of cleaning, probably a polish, remove the slight scratches. Surrounds on these housings need a polish. I would polish the headlight surrounding rings, except that one has 2 tabs. That one has 1.5. Thankfully I found another set online, so I'll polish these up as well. They have all the tabs, which is kind of important. And along with that purchase I got a couple of spare gauges. I don't really need them because the ones in the car work, but I like buying spare parts that I don't really need, just in case. And I could clean up these Parker lenses, but I have some brand new ones to replace them with, so I'll keep those as spares. And just from that first pass, you can see that's a lot brighter now. I'm going to go over it again and do this one and bring them up nice and shiny. I know that looks like a pointless load of effort there, but it does make a significant difference. Feeling a bit lazy, so I'm just going to use some mechanical assistance to polish the corner indicator lenses, and then think I'm about ready to start throwing everything back on the front end. I know you can't see it, but there's only a couple of fairly significant scratches left and they're reduced. The rest has come up really good. And go another round and see if I can knock those deeper scratches out. Might be really hard to tell, but this one appears to be much more shiny than this one. Well, didn't need that to happen. Yes, I did want to polish my toolbox. How did you know? And the tools. Shiny. Alright, assembly. Time to start making things happen. Well, so that's the front end reassembled. It's not complete. I still need to polish the bumper. I still need to polish the chrome strip on the grille. The valance is only held in by a couple of bolts because I have to take the guards off. The lights need repositioning so they're set perfectly once the guards are bolted in fully. But otherwise, that's this front end pretty much refurbished. For the wheels for the Celica. I managed to pick up some Enkei turbo meshes from the 80s to suit this, kind of period correct, 14 inch. They'll suit the style I'm going for on the car. So first I'm just going to remove the wheel weights from the Enkeis and get them rebalanced later. So that's the Enkeis all marked up, ready for a bit of paint on the back side of the wheels. I've also covered where the face of the wheel sits on the hub. Let's get to it. the approach for painting the front faces on these wheels is a little bit different. The masking tape didn't want to stick to the tyres, so I've had to use some playing cards to protect the rubber. I'm going to apply paint to the entire face, and then once the paint's dry, I'm going to remove the excess over the faces I want to be silver with some thinners. So the end keys that are supposed to go on this need a bit of polishing on those silver chrome surfaces. I'm going to cheat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the wheel onto the car, start it up, put it in gear, let it spin, then just hold some sandpaper on the spots I need to be cleaned up, smooth it out, and then I'll clear coat. So there is a discrepancy in size between the hub and the center bore of the wheel. That's about 75.1 mil, and that's about 60.1 mil. You don't want to put the wheel on without a hub-centric spacer, because then the wheel's supported and centralized by the wheel nuts alone. If it starts wobbling loose, loosen wheel nuts, you'll waller out the holes in the wheel, it'll fall off, you crash, maybe die. Not good. So I ordered some hub-centric spacers from eBay. So the OD is 75, will fit the wheel. The inner is 60, will fit over the hub. That will then support the wheel on the hub. It'll be nice and safe. It's going to sit that there on the hub and fit the wheel on. Also got some black wheel nuts to suit. And these are the old hubcaps. I do have new ones which look pretty similar, but I bought some NK badges to go over here. I know it's not factory, but the standard center cats for these wheels secondhand are about $500, and that's just a bit too much money for me to spend. Just for demonstration purposes. Alright, so the front end is sitting up pretty high because that's brand new suspension and shocks, hasn't really been driven on, and also it's just been jacked up, so that's probably sitting at full height. That will settle in time. The rear from here actually looks really good. I'm happy about how these wheels turned out and how they look on this car. So the rear wheels are 14x7 with an offset of 10, and they're running 205/60 profile tyres. The fronts are 6 inches wide with an offset of 15, and they're running 195/60s. I'm going to swap the stock wheels back on because I don't want overspray going on the new wheels and they'll get put aside. I'm going to pull the lenses off all these lights and install the gaskets to prevent dust and moisture getting in there, causing more corrosion, looking filthy. With the gasket in there, the lens actually fits up to the housing quite well. These gasket sets came with brand new stainless steel hardware, so instead of trying to use the old rusty stuff, I'm going to use this. You just need to be careful that don't go too tight with the screws, because we don't want to crack new plastic lenses. Just enough tension to press against the seals. Nice. All right, well, that's one done. Let's move on to the others. Now this gasket for these lenses has a certain profile, so it can only go in one way. So previously this had a seal which was all hard and disintegrating. So I've got a replacement. So what needs to happen now is I need to take this panel off, remove these staples that were holding the original seal on, apply this, use some wire to tie it on I suppose, and a bit of sealant, and then that will be that done, and repeat for the same side. Alright, so that's the seals put on both sides. Now that they're done and I'm happy with that, I'm going to try and do something about the doors. Now the issue with the doors is after 53 years, the hinge pins are starting to wear out. So when you open the door, it drops. So the catch isn't actually lining up with the striker. The top edge of the catch is actually hitting on the striker and then jumping up. And what that's doing is it's starting to wear on that striker. I'm going to attempt to loosen the hinges and raise the door so when it sags back down it sits in its correct position. If I can't get enough movement out of that or it doesn't work, I do have replacement hinge pins and brass bushes. That requires removing the hinges, grinding the old pin out, hammering the bushes in and refitting this pin. But I'm just going to try to adjust it out first and see how we go with that. So in order to do that, I'm just going to loosen all the body mount bolts for the hinges, top and bottom, and then use the jack to raise the door up, retighten the bolts, let it sag back down and hopefully get it to line up with the striker. Well, there's no more knocking noise, so it's actually sitting higher. It's not clipping the striker, but the level still looks a bit out. So I'm going to try and adjust it up a little bit more and try and get it perfect. Good gap here. Yep, pretty happy with that. I've already removed the front bumper and cleaned that up. And so before I remove the rear bumper, I'm going to clean that up. There's a bit of surface corrosion on here. It's just a matter of using some steel wool to buff that out. Bring it back to a nice shine. You think the steel wool would be scratching the bumper, but actually all it's doing is knocking off the corrosion. Steel wool's definitely the way to go to clean up chrome. Well, this stuff's been in the way long enough. It's time to get these seat belts out of here, give the floor a bit of a vacuum now that I've pulled most of the carpet out, and then get onto some welding. Okay, so I'm currently cleaning out and vacuuming the interior of the car in behind where the door cards are, like in the body, and I came across yet another wasp nest inside the door. That's ridiculous. That's probably going to stop the window from working properly, so good thing I got it out, I guess. So while everything's out, I'm just going to throw in a generic shifter boot just to cover the gap around here. Trying to find an original one is near on impossible, and this was like 15 bucks. Slide the boot over. So I started working on the roof, just grinding back any rust bubbles and a few little holes that I found. And I'm finding a lot of body filler, and the little bubbles of rust, once ground down, actually show a decent sized patch. So now I'm hunting over the whole roof to try and find all those, expose all the metal so I can start repairing it. See, just from grinding back here, we found a little hole, a little bubble turned into a larger rust spot. It's a questionably shaped rust spot. Another little hole was just a tiny little bubble in the paint. I'm just hunting over the whole surface now, looking for places that I need to use the flap disc on to prep for welding or priming or whatever I might need to do. And also, we got to tackle this guy finally. Apparently that happened from being parked underneath a mango tree and the saps destroyed the metal. But that is That's different to me anyway. It's going to be really hard to see. Tiny little bubble here. It's probably going to open up to something like this. That's what I'm fighting. So all the rust spots have been treated, covered in etch primer. The larger holes require some patching. And that's where this comes in. It's a bonnet off of a Subaru, but it is sheet metal from a car. I can cut patches out of this with the curves I need to suit the holes in the body, weld them in, and then it should all be fixed. Hole it up from the inside, spray some paint on there, and that will give me the outline of where I'm aiming to trim that to. Okay, so it's shaped and ground down. Look, it's not perfect, but hopefully it's close enough that I can make a weld happen around that. I mean, I've got plenty more material to have another go if that doesn't work, but I'll throw on the welding helmet and see what happens. I've been sanding. I didn't bother recording it because it's sanding, but obviously I've been busy with it. Have I mentioned that I don't like doing bodywork and paint? I feel like I need to say it again. I don't like this. Now, was this going to play nice? Please don't break. Very gently. I do not want to break these lenses because finding replacements near on impossible. Oh. Oh. Oh, very crunchy. So yeah, these door seals definitely have seen better days. Now, I've traced out a set of the original gaskets onto the neoprene. I've got to make 2 sets of those, so there'll be all brand new gaskets in the windows, and the original set I'm going to pack up to stick into the shed as spares. So I'm all suited up in a giant condom. I have a mask, which isn't probably going to work because I have a beard, but I'm not shaving it off. I've mixed up my paint. It's 2-pack paint. Load the gun and get spraying.
Well, as they say, here goes nothing.
And just like that, through the magic of YouTube, it's all finished. It's all actually one complete colour over the whole car for the first time since I've had it. Now I've just got to wait for it to cure completely before I block sand it, which is a sanding technique to try and get it level so the base coat doesn't look all wavy. Something I did learn is that Tyvek suit, the spray suit. I'm not going to use that. It's basically a sweat suit. I got in trouble a couple of times where I nearly had sweat pour all over the panels while they were still wet. I can't really afford for that to happen, so that idea goes in the bin. I'll just wear some long sleeve clothes to hopefully soak it up, or wait for some cooler weather. So the main thing to do is sand all this primer to get it nice and smooth in preparation for base coat. But in order to distract myself, because I really don't like bodywork, I've got things like trim pieces to sort out, like polishing all the chrome. I've got sail panels to sort out. Got the rear garnish, the taillight surrounds, attempt to restore the taillight lenses. So I think in order to keep myself sane, I might do some of those things first before I get onto this. So everything on the back end is very chrome, and a lot of this is failing. So my plan is use a Dremel with a die grinder to get all the rough surface off of most of the chrome, and then mask it off, and then paint the edges black for a bit of contrast. But I will be keeping some highlights chrome for it to sort of stand out a bit. Same thing for the sail panels. I intend to keep the chrome effect on the top ridges here, but make this all black in here. Bit of contrast, make the chrome pop a bit more. And the center garnish here, same thing, except I think I might use a wrinkle paint for this, a bit like I used on the valve cover, but I'll stick to just satin black for the sail panels. I'll also use the satin black for the badge, fill in the lettering white, keep the top surfaces all polished. Hopefully it makes for a more striking appearance and a bit more aesthetically pleasing. Well, all the paint's cured on those parts, but I can't really avoid it anymore. I need to get onto sanding this. I won't be showing too much of it because it's pretty much this 37,982 times. There is the addition of this lightly sprayed on black paint. I'm using it as a guide coat so I know when I've sanded down far enough when this is gone.
One eternity later.
Well, that was hours of sanding, which I didn't bore you with. So now I guess I'm ready to paint. No. Now I need to sand it all over again with 800 grit, wet sanded, to remove the scratches I put in it. Sanding sponge for the curves. Because I don't have the paint just yet, I've got to wait for this to dry, then wrap it in plastic so it doesn't get contaminated, and repeat that process for the other panels and the rest of the body. These are the number plate lights. These would have originally been zinc. There's a bit of corrosion on them. Just pull them all apart, clean off all this rust, and then probably paint the housings black and reassemble. And that won't take too long, but it's another job we can check off the list. So it's just a matter of undoing these two screws, pulling the housing apart, separate piece, lens with a seal, take that away and get that cleaned up, give this a good clean up, get all the corrosion off this, probably paint this black and leave that as zinc. So I just went away and cleaned up these lenses, and the really cool thing about these is they're actually glass. You won't find that on cars these days. So while I'm waiting for the paint to dry on the number plate light housings, I'm going to try and revive the tail light lenses. Now, these are quite faded from many years in the sun. So what I'm going to try and do is sand with some wet and dry paper at about 800 grit, move up to about 1500, and then polish them. They may not come out perfect, but they should be better than what they are now. Now the water I am getting off is quite yellow, which tells me that oxidized plastic is, well, it's definitely coming off. Okay, so they're all sanded and dried. Just going to use the polisher, some Maguire's Scratch X to try and bring them up. Paint's dry on the number plate lights and reassembled, so they're done. Well, unfortunately, the passenger side's known for the amber lens to stay opaque. Maybe it's something to do with the extra heat from the exhaust. I'm not sure why, but it is better than was, so carry on with the other side.
Later.
And speaking of exhausts, a few weeks ago, the extractors I ordered, I can't remember how long ago, finally showed up. And I haven't opened the box yet, and hopefully they actually fit the car. I guess we're about to find out. Protected. I'm not going to be able to fit them to the car right now, but I do have an exhaust manifold gasket, which I'm going to hold on here to see if it all lines up. Well, I think we're in luck. The seller didn't lie. These will fit the 2T engine in the Celica. So now we have some tubular headers extractors. And today we're going to be working on the Celica, which is just about due for paint, except for one thing. It's already done. It's been about close to 4 weeks since this got painted actually. I'm waiting for the 2K to cure completely before I do any sanding. So before I had a chance to get any paint on the car, I had a friend come and visit me from the US and stay with me for a week. He's an owner of a car forum, the Nico Club, and he wanted to come here and just work on cars. So I said I was about ready to put paint on, he could probably help with that. He looked at the car for about 5 seconds and said, "You're not ready for paint." As he was looking over it, he started circling and highlighting all the little points that he thought needed more sanding. So I spent yet another day going over it with him and just sanding everywhere to try and get it smoother, ready for paint.
Get her done, buddy.
So the color is a Toyota or Lexus color. It's a 3Q3 paint code, which is red metallic mica. So he did help me with all the painting, and I only have a little bit of footage of that, which is why we're jumping ahead to this. He also noted that he wasn't too happy with the hardware inside the engine bay. So when he went home, he had already made a list of every size bolt in the engine bay and sent me this, which is a whole package full of fasteners for automotive applications, because he has 2 toolboxes which are absolutely full of said hardware, which has all been rumbled, derusted and zinc coated. So that's to make this look a bit more factory new. Not that I'm trying that hard to do that, but I think it will dress up the engine bay a fair bit. So here's an example of some of the hardware that's been cleaned up. Now I'm just going to go around and replace everything on the list step by step. Well, I'll just keep working my way around the engine bay and replacing all the fasteners as per the list as I go. Well, that looks a lot better now. I'm happy with how that turned out. So I guess I owe my friend Greg another round of thanks for supplying all these bolts to me, all freshly zinc coated. I didn't think it would make that much of a difference, but it has. Now, I got to get around to actually sanding this thing, but in typical fashion, to steer myself away from doing that because it's my least favorite job, I'm going to do something with these taillight lenses. So the lenses are nice and shiny, but you may not be able to pick it up too well. But this part here is kind of more see-through and yellowed compared to like the edges. So my solution for that is some nightshades paint. So this nightshade stuff's actually translucent, like see-through. So all I'm aiming to do is bring the nice red colour back to these lenses. Put 3 coats on and it's actually dry now. It's much redder. Well, I can't really delay it anymore. It's time to move this out onto the lawn so I can start wet sanding the whole thing. Joy. But I'm not going to annoy all of you with more polishing because I just went ahead and did it. You get the idea from what I've already shown you. It's all the passes I need to make it done. The car's as shiny as I'm going to get it. There's a couple of little jobs I need to tie up the loose ends on. One of them is actually getting the reverse lights working properly. Now, in a previous episode, I replaced the reverse switch in the transmission, but there was no wiring present. So I have made plug ends to go on the sensor and ran them through up to the connector in the engine bay where it gets the signal from. Well, before I seal that up completely, I'm just going to test it. All right, so key on, then put it into reverse, and hopefully those lights should now be lit. Well, next I think I'm going to put the horn back in, except I'm not going to put the stock horns back in. Being an early 70s car and trying to build things as cheap as they could, they're not very loud or strong, so I'm upgrading to this compact air horn. And I'm going to use an available hole in the engine bay right here to mount the horn and compressor. It'll still sort of point forward. This is going to be loud enough that it wouldn't even matter if you put it in the back, pointing backwards. People are going to hear it. Alright, so I've put in a relay now, added in a fused power feed to the relay, and it is working. You just have to trust me on that. Oh, they definitely supplied enough hose. think I'm at the last piece for the back, the boot lock. Take the latch off. Put the lock in. Lined up. Perfect. So next I'm going to fit these little guide bushes onto the end plates. So before fitting the glass, I'm going to refit the door handle, lock and weather strip because it's going to be easier to do it without that in the way. Now for the weather strip, sit the chrome on top. I'll polish that later. Little help from a screwdriver, get these pins lined up with the hole. Much easier. Same thing again for the rear window. This seal here is absolutely no good. Should look a bit more like this. While I'm in here, I'm going to add the new door seal here before I put the window seal in. Now I'm going to add the channel the window seal sits in. Now that that's all in, can add in the window seal. Let's try to have a win and get this glass in. Right, moving right on from that, straight onto interior pieces. I've kind of got to do this quickly because I feel like it might rain soon. I'm not actually painting them. I mean, I am, except I'm using a vinyl and fabric paint. Now what this is supposed to do is actually become embedded into the plastic, become part of it, rather than a layer on top that'll just scratch off. That's especially important for things like the door handles that get a lot of wear due to being handled. You don't really want paint getting scraped off of them. Now I've got the dome light in place temporarily. You can see that it's lit, and when I press the door switch, the light goes off. So I'm just going to sort out the parcel shelf next in order to get the right shape, because the edge is tucked right underneath. I laid some paper down on the glass and followed the curve of the lower edge. I then traced out that shape onto a piece of masonite, and now I have to cut it out. It's probably not 100% accurate, so I might need to do some trimming to get it to fit, but at least it'll be a solid starting point. Now just a slide in for a test fit and see how close we got. That side's in. This one's out a little bit. That's pretty close though.
Later.
Yep, so a bit of trimming, now it fits. So what I'm going to do next is open the boot and from underneath apply some spray paint to all the holes in the parcel shelf where the seatbelt bolts and clips go to hold the parcel shelf in place. Then I can drill those out, put on the carpet, then get the soldering iron, melt through the carpet so there's nice sealed edges on all those holes, and then fit it to the car. So I've taken the shelf out. You can see the paint marks that I've made. It's a matter of now drilling them out to the correct size. Just roughly marking out where I need to get the adhesive. I think that turned out pretty well for a first time effort. Oh, that looks like some kind of fiberglassing effort. Yeah. Alright, so that's the dash cover and the instrument cluster removed. This needs some work, and this here, I think I need to take the gauges out, clean the faces, and do something about this old wood grain finish. It's a bit worn off nearby the speedo there. Might just do like a black to sort of make it blend in, because, you know, I can't really restore that. Way too much. Perfect. It's getting harder and harder to find clean microfiber cloths. That's pretty good. The gauge cluster, I went ahead and painted it like I said, but you may notice there's a bit of masking. I ended up going over that whole thing and peeling off all of the wood grain stuff which was simply held on with a bit of adhesive. I cleaned that off, and the pattern underneath didn't look too bad, so I decided instead of painting over it, I would just keep it. And it's a rough sort of gunmetal finish. I don't mind it too much, to be honest. I do need to go over the faces of the rings with some silver to highlight those. But other than that, this is pretty good. The insets are now covered with the vinyl dye, so they're blackened and not scratched up and marred. It's a matter of getting all this peeled off, get the gauges refitted, and then make up a new plate to cover where the radio belongs. Now, I did upgrade all the lighting in these gauges. So what I've done is use these LEDs. There's a nice broad connector there, it makes good contact with the bulb holder. And it gives a nice even spread of light. I have used another type, something like these. They are quite bright, but the only contact they make is with these thin little wires, and they can be a bit tricky. Another thing is these lights cause hot spots, whereas the one I've put in these gauges actually have a nice even spread of light, so it doesn't actually have darker spots on the gauge. It's actually well lit. You can find those bulbs typically on eBay or maybe Amazon, and they're usually available in packs of 10. It's about $10, $12 Australian for those, so not too expensive either. Just make sure they're sitting straight before tightening them all the way up. Get that vent fitted back in. Now I'm just going to block off the hole where the radio is supposed to live. I've made up a metal plate. It's a matter of just fitting that up and attaching the thumb screws that I bought. So these little metal guys here, I'm going to feed in from the front. So there we go, metal plate installed. And just to finish it off, my wife has a vinyl cutter and has made me a Celica logo vinyl sticker. I'll apply it to that plate. It should look okay. And there we have it. I actually think that looks really good. And while making that Celica label, I also got her to make me another label to stick on the air filter. I just used Google Translate to get it to say Celica power, something. It might well say slimy pork chop, I've got no idea. It's also got the little TEQ or Toyota logo. Let's give that a bit of a clean. Well, another little task to take care of is the passenger vent normally has a lever here, so you can adjust the direction of the vent. It's gone and broken, so I'm going to take a pick like this, cut the end off, cut it off here, leave this little knurled section, round the end off, heat it up, push it into the plastic, and that'll act as the new handle to change direction of the air. And on a similar vein, the indicator stalk has the end missing. I think they're usually made out of plastic and deteriorate over the years and just break and fall away. So what I did is I took a center punch and bored out the hole to suit the indicator stalk, cut off the end, rounded it, painted it, and I'll just knock that on and that'll become the new end to the indicator stalk. And seeing as I've already got it done, I'm just going to fit it now. So here it is, paint's still wet, so I'm not going to touch it, but I do have the ability to now move these louvers instead of them just sort of floating in space doing whatever they want. So I'm getting quite distracted by a few little jobs. I need to concentrate and tackle a couple of the big ones that are holding me up from everything else. One of those is the hood liner. I'm going to have to make my own hood liner bows out of some metal rod that I got from a hardware store because finding some factory ones seems to be impossible. And this rod here is 6.3 millimeters and the factory rods measure 5. That's not too much of a concern. And Cam from the Builder Room on YouTube, who also builds Celicas, has kindly traced out the exact dimensions of the roof bows that I need to make. So all I need to do is lay the rod down on this template traced out on paper, make the bends using a hammer and vise, and then once they're done I can get on to starting to stitch up the fabric. He's traced out each individual rod. The front 3 are the same. The very rear one is a slightly shorter because the roof line actually starts to taper in. So what I'm going to do is get the straight rod here, cut off more than I need, make the bends. So after a bit of work in the vise, there are the ends bent. Now they are a bit longer than they need to be. So all I need to do is just mark where the ends should be, make another cut on all of these, then they'll be ready to attempt fitment of the little plastic end lugs. Here we are, a homemade set of headliner roof bows for a TA22 Celica. I've got this piece of velour fabric which I'm going to try and attempt to make a headliner out of. I'm not going to show you because I'm not exactly a wizard with a sewing machine and it's going to be painful to watch. So I'll be back in a sec once I've hopefully made something that will fit and doesn't look like, well, measuring about 7 times, cutting 3 times, sewing 6 times. Eventually got to the point where something that resembles a headliner is there. There's obviously more work to do here, but yeah, the pockets ended up taking those hood liner bows quite well. It's a matter of just trimming off the excess, get the sun visors fitted, get the tension set on each bow, tucking in all the edges and then setting up the trim to hold it all in place. And that's another job ticked off the list. These little plastic ends are what hold it into the roof. And I've finished up trimming and then inserting the edges and also installed the C-pillar trims, which I had previously restored. The next part is I need to move on to doing something with the A-pillars. I'm a bit tired of doing sewing, so in typical fashion I'm going to distract myself and take care of another couple of jobs first. So I've got some Kenwood 5x7s. I obviously only need one. It merely installs on these studs here, so I'll do that now. Okay, so change of plan. So seeing as I have a pair of speakers, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount the second one under here because this dashboard is from a 70s car and doesn't have things like airbags and body control modules and CAN bus systems and other annoying things. There's plenty of room. So what I'm going to do is build some standoffs out of the 6mm metal rod that I used to make the hood liner bows, cut some threads on those, and then run them off the studs for the factory mounted speaker to then suspend the other one facing in towards the cabin. And I take the 6mm rod into the shed, cut it to length, then use a tap and die set to cut some threads, and we go from there. So I just chamfered the ends there to make it easier for the die to start its cut. Hammer. Now it's just a matter of cutting the threads. So now what I got is 2 threaded homemade brackets to suspend that speaker off the mounting studs for the original. I'll mount the speaker to here first. I'll use a flange nut on either side to lock the speaker in place. And then I've got M6 connectors that will thread from here to the studs in the car. Another flange nut behind that to then lock those in place. And hopefully the speaker just happily hangs there and doesn't get knocked about and produces sound like it should. Well, I'll spend some time wiring in the main plug for that head unit to all that cabling, have it all set to the correct length, so when the time comes all I have to do is slide the head unit into the glove box where the plug will be sitting, clip those two together, that's that job done. A-pillar trim. This is just basic vinyl, very roughly cut out, stitched across the top here at the correct angle, to meet the headliner. The rest will get trimmed once it's been glued into place. So I'm going to put on some spray adhesive, but I don't want overspray on the glass or out in the open air here. So first step is I've got to mask this off to contain it to where I need the glue to actually go. And now repeat for the other side. Alright, so that's both sides of the A-pillar trim in, and that means the whole top half of the car at least has been refinished. Well, with the dashboard, I think I'm just going to go for it. I've masked it off, same way as the A-pillars, stop the glue at that certain point. Just going to coat the piece of material I'm going to use to cover this, and just throw it on, hope for the best. I'll then take the tape off and trim the front to follow that line, tuck it around the back, see if it works.
Tomorrow.
So the cover for the dashboard's now well bonded. Need to get it back in the car, but the front edge was starting to lift. And the solution for that is some Sikaflex 227, which is a 1-part urethane panel bonding and automotive sealant. I've used this before to fix dashboards where they get baked by the sun and dashboards lift up and curl up. You stick some of this down in there and press it down into place with a pool noodle, and it holds it there until it cures. No more lifted dashboard. Now just got to push the pool noodle in place to sit on that edge, hold everything where it needs to be till it cures. So while that's sitting in there curing, I think I'll replace the bulbs inside the switchgear. There are actually bulbs in these that light up the face. Many Celicas I've had, I just figured they were plain plastic knobs that don't light up. Incorrect. This is a BA7S, and that's about as bright as it gets. These are much brighter but more directional light. It doesn't really matter because the light travels along a plastic rod and gets to the end here. I don't know if you're going to be able to pick that up, but it is brighter. And I did refinish the steering wheel and repair that crack in the top, whatever was going on with that repair, and made it black to go with the black. I noticed for some reason this high beam had a blue tinge to it. I'm thinking maybe it's burning out. It's still working, but it doesn't match and it looks odd, and it's setting my OCD off a little bit. So I went ahead and ordered a whole bunch of new headlights, including new main beams, because they don't have a Parker globe in them like this one. So hopefully it makes it look a bit cleaner. Oh yeah, when I examine the glass you can see it's got smoky streaks in there. There's something going on in there for sure. These have a flat lens and there's no Parker bulb, unlike this one here that has that there. It's a little bit cleaner. Just run a quick test before I put the front cover on to make sure they actually work.
later.
Well, it is very dark and I don't know how this is going to turn out, but this is with all the LED lights replaced in the cluster. It's actually visible. With the incandescent lights, it's really hard to see. There is no mistaking that this stuff is quite visible. Even the writing inside the hazard switch is visible and lit up. Headlight, washers. So I think it's probably months now that I've had this all wrapped up, just sitting on the table. So all I need to do is unpack it. It's obviously wrapped in underlay, the carpet's here. Sit this out in the sun so it returns to its formed shape because it is moulded car carpet, and then get to work on placing this stuff in and trimming it to fit the floor. Well, after some pulling and tugging and moving and sliding and cutting, I've managed to get the driver's footwell area sort of covered in underlay. Now it's just a matter of repeating the same thing for the other 3 sections. Well, that's the underlay all in place. I would put the carpet in now, but it's still baking in the sun, trying to straighten out. I may need to use a heat gun to sort of get it back into the correct form. So while I'm waiting for the sun to try and sort that out, another task I have is I have to clean the seats before I put the seat covers on, because it's got 50 plus years of human slime embedded in it, and I don't want to just cover that up. I've got just a regular garden sprayer, carpet cleaner, which I'll make a solution with water in there, spray on, scrub with a brush, and then vacuum out all the grossness with a wet and dry vac, which also has an attachment I got off eBay for about 10 bucks, just so it can act like a carpet cleaning vacuum, but it's just for sucking out all the slime. Well, that was the first run, just vacuuming out what was there. I'm going to go over it again with some rinsing water. I'm going to separate out what's in that vac now compared to the rinse. We'll have a look at them side by side once I'm finished.
Later.
All right, well, that's from the first round of vacuuming, and that's with a rinse. No rinse once it's rinsed. Probably can't tell much of a difference between the two, and well, there isn't, to be honest. I ended up rinsing and vacuuming it 4 times in total, and I didn't save those, but you get the idea of how much grossness was in the fabric of those seats. Well, while the seats are drying, I think I'm just going to go for it and try and get the carpet in. Got some cutting to do. So I did have to refurbish the center console a little bit. I took the clock out, pulled that apart, took the front lens away, polished that up. The hour and minute hands in the second hand were kind of faded out and not very good looking, so I got some automotive white paint, painted the hour and minute hand, found some red paint to paint the second hand. It was originally orange, like the gauges needles, but I don't have any orange, so it'll do the job. And then I also fitted the shift boot, which is aftermarket, but still looks okay. And then what we're left with is something that looks a bit like this. So the refurbished clock face looks a lot cleaner than it did originally. Aftermarket shift boot. Genuine leather, apparently. Got that clock plugged in. Try and get this over the shift knob. Will it fit? Just barely. Very good. It's got to shift forward. Well, it makes sense while there's nothing else in the way that I get the new seat belts fitted. New buckles to go with it too, obviously. And a new set of drop links which mount to the roof here. And the belt loops through here and bring the belt close to your shoulder so it's not cutting into your neck. Okay, that's that thread started. Well, finally, after a lot of playing around, the seat belts are in and they work like they should. So I think it's the first time they've had front seat belts since I've had the vehicle. Next thing I'm going to do is finally get the front seats back in so I don't have to sit on the floor to move the car. And I'm almost finished using up all the hardware my friend Greg gave me. That's all been cleaned up and re-zinc coated. So I have seat bolts, and one corner already has a stud there and takes a nut, which I also have. Let's get these guys in. Well, now that everything is sort of in place, I have the C-pillar trim, the headliner, the A-pillar trim. Now that the carpet's in, I could put the kick panel back on because the carpet needed to go underneath that. The plastic panel that goes under the seat, now that that's in place, all this is lined, so now I'm able to put the pinch weld trim on. The interior mirror is supposed to have a plate that holds this up to the roof. This one's missing, so using a section out of the Subaru bonnet that I used to repair the holes in the roof, I'm going to cut this to size and make my own little plate to fit in there and hopefully hold the mirror in place. Well, that's my little bracket all made, painted, holes drilled. Now it's just a matter of fitting it. So I ordered these from Australian Door Cards. This was on the front of the package. They're all laser cut, and it's even got a template of the actual panels, not just some generic one, and also states what car that they fit. Now before I go ahead and make these door cards, I'm going to use these as a template to cut out some builder's plastic. So I can use this as a vapor barrier.
Later.
So now I've got all my pieces of plastic cut out, including the holes for the door handle and window winder. They'll sit on the door, something like this. Hold it in place with some butyl rubber, which you can buy on the roll, much like that. It even has a picture of a vapor barrier on a door on the box, so you know it's the right stuff. I'm just going to lay this in place on the door where it needs to go, and then press the plastic on. Alright, so that's the vapor barriers installed all around. Now to get on with the thing I've been avoiding for a fair bit is to construct those door cards. So I'm just comparing the total height of the door card compared to the existing one. It appears it sits away from a little lip here. I'll make it about the same measurement, clamp it in place. Typically they're held in with like industrial staples, and I don't have an industrial stapler, so what I'm going to do is drill some small little holes and tie it on with some wire. It should have the same effect. It won't look as neat, but it doesn't matter because it'll be hidden behind the back side of the door card anyway. So I've quickly made some ties, pushed them through, and I've also put some Sikaflex 227 along the whole edge. Now I've just got to add the rest of the wires so it actually bonds really well, and do the other 4 door cards as well. So here's the door card. All of my staples are now in place. It's actually quite solid, and now I've got 3 more to go in the same fashion. I'll see you in an hour or 2.
3 days later.
I gave in and got some help getting the door card trims made. I wanted the sewing job to be decent, so I kind of asked my wife to do that, and she didn't want to be filmed, so I don't have that. I went ahead and marked out on the vinyl what I wanted to have done. So I marked up the vinyl in the pattern that I wanted to achieve. The result is something that looks a bit like this. All 4 door cards are now done. It's a matter of using some spray adhesive, fixing them to the door cards, and then use some stronger stuff for the edges. One down, 3 to go.
Later.
Well, that's all the fabric attached to the door cards. Now I've got to go and put some holes in this nice, beautiful finished door card, you know, to let things like the window winder and door handle screws and lock mechanism poke through. So I'll go and sort that out, and then I'll start fitting them to the car. Add the new weather seal to the door trim. Should just clip into place. Well, that's it. Finally, the interior is finished. Pretty much the last thing is now to build the exhaust. And the first step for that is going to be getting off this old stock exhaust, which means I get to cut off the cable ties I was using as exhaust hangers at the back, undo some bolts, thread the whole thing out, and get the headers off. Hopefully that won't take too long, so we'll get stuck in. Alright, well that's the stock exhaust removed. Got a new exhaust manifold gasket which I'll place on now. Offer up the new headers and see how it all sort of fits. Well, fortunately, the new headers actually clear the cross member. The original manifold was sitting a bit high, and then there were bends in the pipe to then clear and then come back up. This is sitting in the perfect spot, ready to just have some straight pipe added on, heading towards the back of the car. So that's going to save me some time and labour. Using an angle grinder, I now need to section up this exhaust and save all the pieces and hopefully build a complete exhaust out of the parts I've got here. Now I know I said I was going to update you as I went along with the exhaust progress, but I'm already at the point where I've got the muffler and pipe welded up. It was too hard to film underneath the car with all the shuffling in and out and trying to get enough light to see what I was doing. It didn't make for good footage, so we've already skipped ahead to the end.
20 minutes later.
Well, that's the exhaust all finished. It's all nice and secure now. I had to redo the rear section because it was hanging too low, so I had to take everything out and section it up and put some pie cuts in and get the level of the exhaust back up. Now that that's done, it's all bolted in back together. Now it's just a matter of starting it up and seeing how it sounds. All right, now I've got to fit rear view mirrors to the doors. Well, it is very close to wheel time. First, these are center caps. I'm going to peel these labels off and put the NK labels on. I know it's not a necessity to replace these, but you know, I want to. Might go and get the heat gun to help with getting that adhesive softened.
A few moments later.
All right, got all the old badges off these caps. It's a matter of peeling the backing off these, heating up the adhesive and pressing them into place. Bit of a change of scenery. I'm going to move the car out to the front to fit the wheels, just hooking up the battery, and then we'll get this thing shifted. Just got to get the wheel nuts loose first. can't believe I finally get to say this. After a year and a half of working on this thing on weekends, it's finished. It's all registered, driving. I'm very happy with it. I expect a few niggly little things to pop up. Being an old girl, you know, stuff's going to break from use, so I've got to be prepared for extra small repairs, but I don't think anything major will happen. I mean, it'd be a shame if the engine blew up and I had to get something more performance oriented for it, wouldn't it? Anyway, if you've been watching the whole series, thank you for sticking around to it finally being completed. If you're sort of new to the channel, I guess thanks for stopping in and watching. I hope you stick around and watch a few more things that I get up to. I need to thank my family for helping and supporting me, you know, including even some filming to get this done. Couldn't have done it without them, so thank you. And I guess all that's left to say is thank you for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one.